All right, what's up, guys? By now, I'm sure that most of you have seen this, but of course, Paul Finebaum shot off at the mouth this week, and everybody is now lighting him up. And I'll tell you, I don't have any inside info on this. There's nothing that I'm going to state on this conference realignment type video that I haven't already said on this channel or on College Football Addiction, our national channel, where we do some conference content as well. But I am going to do a couple of things. I'm first going to respond to Finebaum's comments, rant a little bit about that, tell you why I think he's dead wrong second, and then third, I'm going to maybe put on my tinfoil hat and provide a bit of a conspiracy theory as to why he may have said this. If you're wanting Florida State to go to the SEC, maybe you'll want to stick around for that part. Okay. Let's play the clip for you. Now, I'll tell you what the context was. He was being asked by a caller about Florida State, who he basically asked if the SEC might be looking to take FSU to keep the Big Ten from planting their flag in the Southeast. The way he asked it was very assumptive, kind of saying, because we already know that this is what's going to happen, do you think that the SEC might take this action? And here's how Finebaum responded.
You're skipping just a few steps. They haven't taken any schools yet, and I'm not convinced, Bash, that they will really want Florida State. I know Florida State thinks they're heavily in demand, but there's some question about exactly what they bring to the Big Ten. They don't fit the Big Ten model. The Big Ten, I believe, other than Nebraska, has highly accredited schools, and I don't think Florida State really qualifies for that.
So he says that they don't really fit. They don't really fit the model. They don't really qualify due to academics. We'll talk about that in a moment. But Finebaum's probably not the best source for this. And maybe I shouldn't even have made this video. Maybe I shouldn't be ranting about it at 11 o'clock on a Saturday night so that you can watch this Sunday morning, hopefully before you go to church, or maybe this is your church to listen to me rant about another ESPN idiot. But we'll talk about the merit of what he said in a moment. But what I want to remind you of, what I want to rant about a little bit, is that Finebaum is the biggest flip-flopper on this subject that you've ever seen. Now, last September, I made a video, and I kind of screwed the video up. I had 3 different audio clips, and I accidentally played the third one, first. And so I ended up playing the same clip twice, and there were supposed to be 3 different ones, and there are at least 2 different ones, and I got to bash him a little bit, but you at least got to hear the flip and the flop. What he actually did was he flipped, flopped, flipped back in 2023, and he's doing it again. As a quick reminder, what that video contained, or was supposed to contain, was that Finebaum told you back last May that Florida State and Clemson were somewhat attractive. In fact, he said in May of last year, like I said, that Florida State had pulled ahead of Clemson, and they were obviously the most attractive ACC team that existed. Remember, May of last year was before the Board of Trustees meeting. It was before any news came out that Florida State was going to start this process of looking to get out of the ACC. He told you that Florida State was way ahead of Clemson. They've already passed them up, and they're the most valuable team, most attractive team out there. Right after the Board of Trustees meeting, the day after, he said that Clemson and Florida State were the 2 most likely teams to end up in the SEC and the 2 most attractive teams that would bring value. They'd won multiple championships. They compete and they recruit at the highest level. They have good coaches and good buy-in, etc. He said there are no better 2 fits, and that's a direct quote. But then by mid-September, we went from July to mid-September, and he said that they sounded like a bunch of whiners and that nobody wanted them. Nobody would like the way that they acted at the Board of Trustees meeting back in 2023 in late summer. So he thought they would get left out. He flipped and flopped and flipped. Now, what I'll tell you is, people that don't have information tend to do this. They tend to say whatever goes with the flow, whatever fits the vibes. People that like to fit the vibes all the time don't usually have anything of substance, and so that's what they say. Florida State certainly has a landing spot in the Big Ten. Let's talk about his actual comments. But before I get to that, I will tell you this quickly. A lot of you have asked how you can get more content, how you can support. Patreon.com/DFNS. Patreon.com/DFNS for Double Fries No Slaw. It's a good way to support. It's a good way to get more access. It's a good way to get access to our Discord, which is going at all hours of the day. Thousands of FSU fans in there talking FSU football, conference realignment, ACC, SEC, all the things. Go check it out. Patreon.com. It's a good way, again, to support, to give back. If you appreciate the content, if you appreciate what we're doing, you can go check us out over there. You can sign up for as little as $3 a month. There are other levels that get you other things. But again, go check us out over there if you haven't just yet. Now, as far as academics, we've told you this 7 or 8 times, but Brett McMurphy has already confirmed that AAU membership is not a requirement for the Big Ten to add teams. And I know that's not what Finebaum said. He didn't say you have to be AAU, but that's his implication. His implication is that the academics are of such importance that Florida State would not even fit what the Big Ten is trying to do. McMurphy's told you that maybe AAU membership, maybe academics are not at the highest of list priorities for the Big Ten right now. I will tell you this, Florida State is nearing AAU membership, and I'm not going to put a timeline on it. I'm not going to tell you it's this year, next year, the year after, but they are nearing, and they will be approved. They will be granted membership into the AAU. Florida State also is a top 20 public institution in the country. There's this narrative around Florida State just being the worst school out there when it comes to education. Florida fans like to gloat about, this is the reject school. Well, Florida State is a top 20 public university in the country. Florida's top 5. They certainly have a little bit better academics, but it's a gap that has been closing and will continue to close. And so Florida State, as far as education goes, does do really, really well. This narrative of, Florida State just being a party school and a drunk athletic school that Finebaum's trying to push just isn't necessarily the truth. Take all the academic stuff aside and say that none of that was true. Say that none of what I just told you was true. The decisions that the Big Ten is making right now have everything to do with money. They have everything to do with the almighty dollar. Academics, I don't want to say they don't matter, but that's not what's at the forefront of minds right now. It is an absolute money grab everywhere in college athletics and college sports right now. And with the money that will be brought in from bringing in a Florida State, Clemson, other programs like that, academics are certainly in mind. They're not top of mind. All right, lastly, get your tinfoil hats out. I told you earlier about him flip-flopping all over the place. Now, let's say that he's not flip-flopping here. Could this be Finebaum's way of starting another narrative, flip-flopping one other time? We know for a fact that ESPN has their analysts and in-studio hosts push narratives that help forward the agenda that ESPN wants. We know that beyond a shadow of a doubt because of what happened in December. We watched analyst after analyst after analyst change their tunes and change their minds about things that just days before they could not even fathom happening. I'll tell you, no one was worse at it, and I know you all hate Herbie, but nobody was worse at it than McElroy. Greg McElroy said, I can't even fathom, 3 days before the playoff committee came out, the final playoff rankings. He said, I can't even fathom a world where an undefeated wouldn't get in. If that's the case, we shouldn't even have the games. Why even play the sport? And then the day of the committee, Gabe put Alabama in. McElroy was all about it. But we do know that ESPN has their analysts and in-studio hosts push narratives that help them out. We know that Finebaum has been anything but consistent on this issue. And I think we're going to the Big Ten. I'll tell you that. I think Florida State ends up in the Big Ten. It's not what I necessarily want. It's not what I necessarily would prefer. But when you listen to people outside of my sphere, you listen to people like Josh Pate and others who chat about this subject regularly, they're way less certain. They're way less certain of a landing spot. So let's say the SEC is a possibility. Is Finebaum possibly saying that FSU is not attractive to the Big Ten? Is that him telling you that there's a chance they land in the other Power 2 conference? Is that him kind of alluding to, kind of hinting at the fact that they don't fit the Big Ten from a academic standpoint? They kind of fit what we do down here in the South. They kind of fit what we do down here in the Southeast. Maybe don't take it as such an assumptive that they're going to the Big Ten, maybe he knows that where the SEC is looking. He knows the SEC is trying to get certain teams in their conference. And so remember, the question was, will the SEC block the Big Ten from this thing that we think is inevitable? Well, if the SEC wants Florida State and Clemson, and I'm not saying they do, but if they want Florida State and Clemson, do they want Florida State and Clemson just to block the Big Ten? Well, even if that is what they want, they don't want that to be the narrative, right? You don't go date the pretty girl just so your buddy can't. You date her because you wanted her. How would it sound if you went and told everybody and her and your buddy and everybody, hey, I'm only dating her because I didn't want you to have her? I think it's the same thing here. If the SEC takes Florida State and Clemson, even if it is to block the Big Ten from having them, I don't think you want that narrative out there. And so maybe a little tinfoil hat, maybe a little conspiracy theory there. But if I'm Finebaum, I'm doing the SEC's bidding, and I'm not making it look like they're just blocking other people. I'm trying to say, like, no, they weren't even wanted by that other conference. We took them because it was where they made the most sense. Now, you listened to Finebaum a few weeks ago. He said they didn't have a place in the SEC either. So, again, flip-flop, flip-flop, flip-flop. That's what he does. We get questions at time to time about the Big 12, and I want you to lean in really closely, and we'll talk about this. As far as the Big 12 goes, the answer is no. And that's probably all that needs to be said about it, and that's no disrespect to the Big 12. But if Florida State's spending hundreds of millions of dollars and tons of money in legal fees to end up in the Big 12, we're going to have a lot more questions than we have answers. And so that's really all I probably need to say about that. So Finebaum, what's my final take there? I think that Finebaum is a flip-flopping idiot that has no idea what's actually happening. I think he's gone back and forth on this more than Trump and Biden did the other night on who would beat each other in golf. I think that he's hated FSU since 2013 when he talked all that smack about what Florida State was going to have to face in Auburn and how Auburn was going to beat them in the national championship game. And then he had to eat crow for weeks when Florida State ended the SEC's reign of terror in the BCS. Remember Jimbo when he would go on the car wash? Remember how even back then, as much as we hate ESPN now, how much we hated seeing Jimbo go on Finebaum. And we just wished that Jimbo would give it to Finebaum just a little bit. He never did, but we remember that even 10, 11 years ago now. What are your thoughts? What are your thoughts on Finebaum? What are your thoughts on his comments? What are your thoughts on my conspiracy theory? Let's talk about it down below. Listen, I appreciate you guys for tuning in. We'll talk to you soon. Got a busy week. Maybe some fireworks going off here tonight before we even get to July. I appreciate you guys for all the love and support. Talk to you soon. Go Noles.